Welcome back, ladies and gents, and as always, thank you so much for watching. So we've done a few videos on the cabin, kind of showing different parts of it, like the electrical, the rooftop deck, which the rooftop deck was super cool, by the way, and a few other things. But we haven't really talked about some of the basics, and the basics meaning like what the company that we worked with did to kind of get us going. The place we worked with was called Genco Sales out of Noonan, Georgia. I will put a link to them in the description below so you can go check them out. They're not a cabin place. They specialize in shipping containers for many different uses. A lot of it's like job site type stuff, small businesses, and they had done some hunting cabins. When I talked to them, they had some really cool ideas, and all we wanted was the basics, right? Like, hey, look, I don't have the time to do this myself. I don't have the time to just start gutting a container and working on it. What can you do to just kind of get us to where we can hit the ground running and make updates as we go? And that's where we are now. Now that we've had this thing out here for, I want to say, going on 4 or 5 years now, there's a few things we want to change, and I can mention that whenever we do a walk around. But let's go ahead and start with the outside of the cabin. We'll start with the windows and the air conditioner and stuff like that, and we'll work our way in and just kind of explain what it is they did. Also, I've got some pictures from where they built it. We'll roll those in. Gosh, I can't talk. It's too cold. Sorry. We'll roll those in as well to show you guys. So let's go check it out. All right, so we're going to start with the back of the cabin here. Now on the outside, besides the rooftop deck, which we already had a video on that and how they put the mounts up there, really all we got is, besides them painting it, is the air conditioner with that sleeve, they call it, that's wrapped around it, as well as our windows, which of course we got the windows on the back, and then the ones down here on the side. Now for the air conditioner, that is actually a very cool idea because you could mount this air conditioner without having that sleeve on there. And that is not thin steel. So what they explained to me is you could take a bucket and pick up this entire container on one end just by putting it underneath there. So that is very thick steel. I don't know the thickness of it, but I would say it's probably overkill for that application. One problem I did run into that I had to fix was, if you look right here, actually the sun coming in helps. If you look right there, you'll see all that foam. So that sleeve is big enough to put a bigger air conditioner in there, right? Or I'm sure you could probably get a heat air combo, whatever. I didn't know that this was open. All they had in there was literally like a folded up piece of foam like you would get from a package if you order it. And I kept getting stink bugs in the cabin. Now, at least it wasn't wasps, I guess, but still, you don't want to have a bunch of, because I'm like, I'd come in and be like, how the heck are bugs getting inside this sealed up box? They were coming in through there, and they were all in that air conditioner. So I had to take the air conditioner apart quite a bit, not completely apart, but take the front panel off and all that. And then all I did was just shoved a bunch of cardboard and some other foam in there, and then just use that spray foam. And now it's completely sealed up. So lesson learned on that part, but that really does protect it very well, which is really super cool. The windows are just your basic windows you can get at the home improvement store. I mean, your Home Depot, Lowe's, wherever. I mean, I guess it depends on where you're at in the country, if you even have that. And then they did these wonderful bars. So the bars are, and I'll kind of go down here too and look at this one while we're talking. And same thing with these windows. These are just standard windows, but the bars were kind of a standard thing they did for job sites and so forth. It was a security thing. It was so somebody couldn't just break a window and run in there. If I can back up a little bit without killing myself, run in there, steal something, run off. Out here, I'm not really concerned about that as much as I am just something getting in there. And it doesn't really, it doesn't keep the glass from breaking. So if this glass broke while I'm gone, it's going to be sitting here for probably, I'm usually out here once a month. There's no telling what can get in there, right? You could have water in there, you get animals in there and all that. So the bars, I could easily cut these off because these are just attached down here. I could easily cut these welds with an angle grinder and maybe figure out some way to cover them up or just remove them completely. Because when we move out here, that's our plan to build. I'll probably just cut them off. But for now, they work. That's one of those things I wish I'd have done different. It does make cleaning the windows harder, but you can still clean them. But the windows themselves, they're set into this. So what you've got here is, of course, the cabin is containers cut right there. And then they've got this steel. I don't know if this is like a square, I don't know what the proper term is, where you've got like square box steel or something like that. You know what I mean? In here, and then the window sits in it. So obviously you just pull the window out from the inside. I'm not really sure how they mounted, but it probably is not that difficult to pop these out when it's all said and done, because all you got to do is remove trim, which I'll show you when we go on the inside. But that is pretty cool that they did that and it was already set up. But I'm sure there's many different ways. So if you're really good with steel and you can weld, this is probably right up your alley to do this. And again, all you're doing is just cutting it out. One idea I had was if you're already cutting out this much of the container, that whole rectangle, you could use that as a shutter almost to where it like swings down, up, slides, whatever. Maybe you could hook it up kind of like those barn doors where you just slide it open. That would be pretty freaking cool. Just ideas, right? Just an idea of maybe ways to protect it. But they did put the windows in there, like I said, and we went with these bigger ones, and we are so freaking glad we did because it helps with the view and also helps with fresh air whenever you want to open them. On this side, same thing, same window, not much difference. And again, as I said earlier, this has been out here for about 4 to 5 years. We do need to do some cleaning, yes, because it's out in the woods. And that's another thing too, is if you had something to seal this up, like a shutter or something, it would hopefully help with some of the cleanliness on your windows. Just an idea. But that's pretty much it on the outside, all that they did. That was it. I mean, it was just really it's just the windows. Now, one question I get, this is a little off topic that I get all the time, and I'm so appreciative of all the comments, so keep them coming, is what happens if you're in there and somebody closes the freaking doors? That is a great, great question. When the day we had this container delivered, the gentleman that was here that kind of helped me, because I wanted to have somebody here that had equipment in case we had to move the cabin around, like with a tractor or a skid steer. He had them both. And we both looked at each other and says, what happens if somebody wanted to shut you in there? Well, we do lock the cabin open using a very crude chain and padlock or key lock, whatever, you know what I mean? And you're not getting through that unless you have bolt cutters or a grinder. So I guess technically if somebody wanted to come out here with some way to cut the chain, they could do it and lock me in. I still got cell service, but you know what? I could what if it to death all day. But we do lock it open, and it does make me feel a little bit better. So before we go in, this little area right here, this to me is the coolest area on the cabin. I love it. I love it. I love it. And this was originally not my idea. Now, I did have the idea of having this wall just from pictures I looked at, just from doing some, Google image searches and all that. And he was like, yeah, this is absolutely not a problem. And we'll get into the makeup of the wall here in just a moment when we get inside. So this little spot and why we did it. Now, you lose it's roughly about 2 feet. So that means it's a 20-foot container. So we've only got about 18 feet inside. You lose some space. And I didn't like that because I wanted it to come all the way out here, which he said we could easily do. And then whenever you open the doors, this door would literally be like right at the entrance. I'm like, because, you want space, right? Square footage is already tiny in these things. You don't want to make it even tinier. But this did a couple of things for us. First of all, it's space. So the cable, for example, that we use to hook the cabin up to the grid, because yes, we're on the grid. You can see the cable out there hooked up. We store right here. During hunting season, I can put a lot of stuff that I have here, gear and all that, and I can just leave it sealed up. Also, we used to have a generator before we were on the grid, and guys, we would just put that right here. So what a perfect place to store it. You're not putting it in your nice cabin, but you're also not leaving it outside, and you sure as heck don't want to have to just lug it out here all the time. So it really, really was useful. Also, if you're muddy and you got just, dirty boots and all that, you can store them up here, etc. Right? Very useful space. We love it. They also did this cool diamond plate stuff. That was his idea. Because he said, what do you want there? And I said, you know what? I like the industrial look. I do like kind of like the modern steel look in the middle of the woods. So just kind of surprised me. And he went with that. And I just thought it was cool. It does get cold though, but it looks cool. And what's even better is it just still looks brand new because these doors are always being shut and it's protecting it. So even though this is outside right now, 99% of its time it's sealed up. So it works very, very well. So that is pretty much this spot. So we're going to make our way inside and see what we can look at in there. So we'll start here in the back of the cabin, starting with the air conditioner, the least glamorous part. So first of all, you can see my foam when I was at war with the stink bugs. I had a little gap there as well as some on the bottom. Basically, when I pulled this off, you can see that just kind of sits there and pulled some other pieces off. I was like, holy cow, I got to get up in there. So that's why that's there. But the sleeve continues in. You can see there is some surface rust here. That was actually there when we first got it. I was just been way too lazy to ever go back and paint it. But you don't see it anyway, so I really don't care. But that sleeve comes all the way through. And this air conditioner is riveted in, which is, I'm not sure if it goes into the body of the air conditioner or if it's something that's kind of in there holding it. But all I'd have to do is just drill the rivets out, pop that sucker out, slide it out this way, and replace it with a new one, and then go full on crazy. I'd probably do something a little different than the foam. But like I said, it was the middle of the summer and I was at war. I didn't want them. But that's how they did it, and it works great. And then they've got this trim, and actually all the trim in here is like this plastic PVC stuff. I'm sure, folks, it's like the cheapest of the cheap crap that you can get. Most everything in here is very basic and utilitarian. That's why it can easily be changed. But that's the air conditioner. It's in there. It's in, and it ain't going nowhere. So it's extremely stout. So if you're trying to put one in a shipping container, here's an idea to do it. So we'll start with the floor next, and the floor is the one thing I do need to upgrade or improve. If you go watch my video about some condensation that we deal with in here, which I think is very common for tiny homes in general, you'll see why, because it gets very cold. But the floor here is just that they did like a vinyl plank, and the floor is actually pretty nice. It's not like a sheet vinyl. It's actually planks that you can buy. I'm not really sure who makes it or anything. It does have a texture to it, which is really nice. But whenever they installed it, I remember talking to him, and he's like, "Let's talk about floor insulation." And I literally said, "No, I'm fine." Yeah, that was a huge mistake on my part. So whatever. Shame on me. I should have had him insulated. But this is literally just down on the whatever the containers have. It's like I don't know if it's plywood. I don't know what the actual boards are that are in there. But this is just literally laid down on top of that. And you can actually, when you walk on it, in some spots, you can feel where there's just a few imperfections where the container floor itself was a little, not perfect. You can get the same thing in your house, right, when it settles and stuff like that. So we like the floor. Don't like the fact it's not insulated. But the cool thing is, all we would have to do is we got these same trim pieces down here that are PVC. And we'll get to more on this when we talk about the walls in a second. We could pop these off, rip this floor up, insulate it, put new floor. Or what I just thought of is, why not just insulate on top of this existing floor? Well, first, remove your trim, put your insulation in. It's a freaking box, so the cuts are going to be easy. And then just put a new floor on top of it and go with something that's probably a little more, dare I say, stylish. Not that I'm a stylish person, but something that looks a little bit better. Just an idea. But we do like the floor. So pretty cool that they did it. And as far as, like a standard thing. So that's the floor. Now for the walls on the inside, I really kind of like the way they did this. And it was kind of a neat idea. There's one thing I might change now, but I don't know. I could change it in the future. So first of all, this is siding. This is like an outdoor type siding. I can't remember if this is something more for like a patio where it's covered, but it is just large sheets of it. And I don't know if that's something that they just got like at a discount or whatever, but that is something I would like to change. This is just, it looks decent. I could paint it, but it would really be cool to have something that's a little more rustic looking. The 2x4s in here, there are 2x4s that are attached up onto the container. Now, one thing I don't know is how they attach. Do they attach on the top and bottom? How are they attaching the 2x4s to the actual walls of the container? That I don't know. I wasn't there when they did that part. I do have some pictures I'm going to roll in just a second. But I'm sure if I ever have to rip this wall apart, I'm going to learn very, very quickly. But yeah, I'd like to replace this. The 2x4s are flat up in there. So you've only got like what, roughly 1.5 inches, 1 3/4, because they're not really a 2x4, which is silly. And it is insulated. So you've got the 2x4s in there flat, but you've only got insulation that's maybe 1.5 inches, 1 3/4. So if you went with standard 2x4 walls, which is what this is, which we'll get into in a second, you would be able to put much more insulation, and you could take your outlets and all that, and you could actually recess them in. Yeah, you could do sheetrock, but I would probably just do something different and just have some cool looking boards and all that. So that's what I did on the walls. That was actually a big deal because I wanted that ran as well as the electrical. And it turned out, I think it turned out pretty good. Again, I'm not really keen on the color and all that now, just the whole hindsight thing. But it did the job. And our purpose was, we want to hit the ground running. We want to be able to get in something. And I literally just kind of picked out a very basic color for the inside, and we could always repaint it. So I'm going to roll in some pictures right now. So you can see here, these are kind of like skeletonized looking pictures of where the 2x4s were sitting. Extremely basic. You can also see the front wall, which we're about to get into, and how those were. So the front wall was framed up just like your traditional typical 2x4 wall. And then you can see how the boards up against the side walls were laying flat instead of perpendicular up against the sides. Again, not sure how they attached them, but I do know they blew in insulation before they put these panels up. So at least they told me they put insulation. I don't know. I might pop this off and be like, holy crap, that's why the walls get cold. But I just think it's not enough insulation. It helps. The walls don't get really too bad to touch. The floor gets really, really bad though. So, if you're doing this, just keep in mind if you lay them flat, because the reason we did is to save space. But hindsight being what it is, it's always perfect. We would be fine if it came in just a little bit. So maybe that's something I'll do. I don't know. We'll see. And then there's this wall right here, which is one of the coolest parts of the cabin. Actually, I guess this wall and that little stoop out there is probably the coolest part. So you saw in the pictures we rolled in earlier, this wall is literally just like any typical 2x4 wall. The window is just your basic window. You can get the home improvement store as well as the door. And of course, it just makes for an excellent view. And what they did here is they did the same thing, except of course, you've got more insulation on it, but you don't have the steel on the outside like you do on these. And everything's just kind of basic. It's just you got your standard door. Now this door does open to the outside. The reason is because in these tiny spaces, opening the door to the inside actually causes you to lose space. Now, technically somebody could come up, well, not technically, they could, and pop the pins out of the door on the outside and rip the door off, but I mean, that's, hopefully somebody's not that silly knowing there's somebody in there. But that is why we did the door that way. That was actually his idea, and I thought it was a good one. But this wall is just fantastic. It is absolutely super cool. And then let's see here. Is there anything else I'm missing? Yeah, it's got the same, of course, the same siding. The electrical's done the same. You got the same cheap PVC plastic trim that you could replace. All of this in here is all PVC on the edge as well. And of course, the window is easy to get to, clean, and all that. So that's absolutely wonderful. One thing we did do is up here, this was my wife's wonderful idea, is that is a shower curtain rod. So we have a shower curtain rod up there because we have these that we close when we're in here. I can get a hold of it. And so, yeah, you can see through it, but you can't really see in. And the reason we do that is because I don't want to be sitting there watching a movie, which I'm going to be doing here in a little bit on the wonderful TV, and see Sasquatch standing there staring at me. So it's just a privacy thing. We do it. It's kind of a creepy feeling to be in here when you get like a movie going and all you have is just complete darkness right there. It's one of those things where you think, well, I can just hide under the covers and the monster won't see me. But, it just makes you feel a little bit better. It's privacy, and that's a good idea by her. We did do curtains too, by the way, but I wasn't even going to talk about that. That's just your basic standard curtain rod. But that's pretty much that wall. And it's just wonderful. It's just absolutely wonderful. We do have down here, this is just me just nitpicking at stuff. The little threshold piece they used here, I'm not sure what stuff they spilled all over that because it was sticky from the time we got it. Now we've just got dirt and debris all over it, and it's kind of gross and icky. Probably just need to come out here. I need to do a really good cleaning on this cabin and go through it. I've done just your regular just simple cleaning, but it's been out here about 5 years now, and we really need to do some stuff to it. So that I could just probably just resand that and stain it, stuff like that. Just find different things, but that's pretty much it, folks. That's what they did in here. Besides the electrical that I've already talked about in the rooftop deck mounts, I mean that's pretty much it. And that gave us just kind of like that starting point. The door here is just a standard door, which I mean obviously going with the full length glass was extremely smart. The glass does get extremely cold, but it does its job, and we absolutely love it. And that's pretty much it. That's pretty much all the build stuff that they did for us. And yeah, there's a lot I'd like to change, but if I had it to do over again, I'd probably do it the same way, honestly, except for maybe insulation down here. That was definitely my fault. Well, guys, we're going to wrap this video up here. If this kind of content's the stuff you like, hit that subscribe button. We're going to have some more stuff coming up. I'm hoping when it gets a little warmer out here, but not just the warm, just some longer days, I can come out here and do some projects, and we can actually put that on film and actually get some more stuff upgraded or done to this cabin, and also some property work out here. Also, I'm going to put down in the description below a link to our No Rules Life Garage page. If that's your kind of thing, go check that out. But as always, I thank you guys so much for watching, and we'll chat with you next time.